Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. You're with me, Mazlina Ismail. Alhamdulillah. In this program, we have with us once again none other but our guest, Dr. Muhammad Husni Muhammad Amin, to continue with us in this program, Great Works of the Muslim World. And this week, we'll be speaking on this topic as we promised last week, Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato's Republic. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Husni.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Mas.
Thank
It's
you
good
for
to see you
joining us
again.
again. Yes.
Thank you for
Same here.
inviting me. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Right. As I mentioned today, Dr. Muhammad Husni Muhammad Amin is a Senior Research Officer at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies, or short as KIAS. And we'll be speaking on Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato's Republic. But before we delve into our topic today, why don't you give us a brief or a background of its author, Ibn Rushd himself? Who was he and why was he popular in the West?
Yeah, okay. Certainly, Mas. Before that, A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Coming to the figure and the book that we are going to look into today, Ibn Rushd, his full name was Abdul Walid ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Rushd. He was a Muslim Andalusian. He's a polymath, meaning he mastered several subjects. He was a jurist. He was a faqih in the Maliki Mazhab. And he wrote about many subjects, including philosophy, theology, medicine, astronomy, physics, psychology, mathematics, Islamic jurisprudence and law, and also on linguistics. He served as chief judge. He was the Qadi al-Qudah in Cordoba, and a court physician for the Almohads, or in the original name, the Muwahhidun Caliphate. This is after they have overthrown the Murabitun. And he was born on April 14 in 1126, coinciding with the Islamic year of 520 after Hijrah in Cordoba, in Muslim ruled Spain. And his family was well known in the city for public service, meaning he has relatives, his own father, they served in public service, especially in the legal and religious fields, meaning some of them served as religious scholars and teachers. And his own grandfather, Abdul Walid Muhammad, who died in 1126, the year he was born, was the Qadi of Cordoba and also Imam of the great mosque in Cordoba under the rule of the Almoravids, or the Murabitun. So Ibn Rushd, he, as a scholar, he authored more than 100 books and treatises, which makes him prolific, and which is why we selected him, one of his work, to be featured in the Great Works. So his philosophical works include numerous commentaries on Aristotle, for which he was known in the West as the commentator or the father of rationalism. This is why in the West he's very much known and loved. And but in the West he's known by his Latinized name, Averroes. So he lived during a unique period in Western intellectual history, in which philosophy and theology was waning in Muslim world. Remember that he came after Imam Ghazali, after Imam Ghazali had dealt a significant, powerful blow on philosophy with his Tahafut al-Falasifa. Remember last time we discussed about this, and just as philosophy was beginning to flourish in Latin Christendom, so we can see that some of his works, although lost in the Muslim world, they have been translated into Hebrew, into Latin, and they are being studied. They were being studied during that time in the West. In fact, the book that we are going to look into today, this is titled Averroes on Plato's Republic, is a book that is the Arabic manuscript has been lost, but this particular translation into English was worked on from a surviving Hebrew translation of the work of his Sharah or commentary on Plato's Republic. So that's a little bit about his background.
Right, thank you. Wow, I can say he's
Yes.
quite the prolific author, though. So,
Yes.
besides the commentary, Dr. Husni, what other works did he produce? Meantime, can you
Yeah.
just stay a little bit distance from your microphone? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
So
thank
so
you.
yeah. What the work that he produced, well, we can say there's 100 treaties. So we take the most important ones. The first one that we can think of is Faslul Maqal, which has been translated as the decisive treatise in 1178. It's a treatise that argues for the compatibility of Islam and philosophy. And then remember that we mentioned in some of our viewers has asked that we do
Yeah.
one series on tahafut. Tahafut supposedly the
Yeah.
Ibn Rushd counter to or rebuttal of Imam Ghazali's Tahafut Falasifa. It's as a landmark criticism on philosophy. So in Tahafut, it combines ideas in Ibn Rushd commentaries and other standalone works, and he uses these ideas to respond to Al-Ghazali, to register what are the things that he thought Imam Ghazali had missed on some points on philosophy. But we can see that this also criticizes the previous philosophers, Ibn Sina, and Ibn Sina's Neo-Platonist tendencies. And we can see that sometimes he even agree with Imam Ghazali, especially in his critique against the former. And as a royal physician at the Muwahidun court, Ibn Rushd wrote a number of medical treatises. The famous was Al-Kulliyat fi at-Tib, meaning the general principles of medicine, which has been translated into Latin and given the title the Kulliyat. It was written around 1162, before Ibn Rushd's appointment at the court. So I think this work gained him some reputation, which he used later in his CV to be appointed as a court physician. So this book is opposite. I mean, some of the ideas he wrote as opposite to Al-Juziyat fi at-Tib, written by his colleague Ibn Zuhr or Ibn Zuhr, a renowned physician. But the two had been known to have collaborated, intending that their works complement each other. So and as I said before, Ibn Rushd, he served multiple times as a judge, a qadi, and he produced multiple works in the fields of Islamic jurisprudence and legal theory. But the only book that survived in this field coming from Ibn Rushd is the Bidayatul Mujtahid wa Nihayatul Muqtasid, or shortly known as Bidayatul Mujtahid. This is the book where he explains the differences of opinion between the various Sunni madhahibs, both in practice and their underlying juristic principles, and also explaining the reason why these differences are inevitable. They will come into differences. But despite him trained in the Maliki madhab, and despite him being a judge, a qadi of the Maliki madhab, this book also discusses the opinion of other schools, including the more liberal and the conservative ones. So we know also that in this book contains the summary to Imam Ghazali's book Al-Mustasfa, which is Al-Ghazali's legal theory on Muslim jurisprudence. This is one of the last books which Imam Ghazali wrote. Yeah? So that is some of the titles that we can mention now without taking too much time, Mas.
Sure. Thank you very much. Now I'd like
Yeah.
to come to our, third question to you. Like, would you
Yeah.
give us a, as usual, we would like to know a brief rundown on of the commentary. What are the central ideas of this work, perhaps?
Yeah, okay, sure. So if you take this book and then you can see that in the table of content is divided into three parts. They call it the first treatise, the second treatise, and the third treatise. So, but before we go into the central ideas of Ibn Rushd's work, we have to bear in mind that this work of his is a commentary, is a sharah on Plato's Republic. So therefore, it is necessary for us to be at least acquainted with Plato's work. And we see that in Plato's Republic, it's a treatise on political philosophy, but it can't help but discuss, because politics is ultimately the venture of human beings, the activities of human beings, how people govern their affairs. So you cannot help but discuss the nature of the human beings first. What is a human being and why he does what he does. Okay, so Plato views that it is in the nature of human beings to be acquisitive, to be ambitious, to be competitive, and also jealous. And so he writes in the Republic that as a cognate of politics, you have polemos, which means war, is an instrument of the political city-state. That's why you have such word as a polity. Politics is the art of managing things, but you manage a polity, also a city-state. So they have this word called polis, which means a city. So politics is actually how to run a city. So the city-state, because it's made of individuals, so it has a desire for growth and also the desire to defend itself against any threat or enemy that seeks its destruction. So that's how we establish the relation between war and politics. You can see that even modern writers such as modern writers who writes on war, such as Baron von Clausewitz, he writes that war is the continuation of politics by other means. Meaning, if you want something, first you engage through politics, you send diplomats, you engage by diplomacy, and then if you don't get what you want, then you resort to war. So, but Plato argues that for a polity to thrive in a state of virtue, meaning for its people to live in peace and for them to exercise virtue, to become good, to excel in whatever they're doing, its people cannot live in a state of permanent war. So he establishes that it's the responsibility of the ruler to use his judicial power, his subjects will be kept away from war and its horrors, but that can be achieved only when they obey laws and observe statutes. So where do we learn this? We learn this in Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato. So for a Muslim to learn about the West, so it is entirely possible for them to go through Muslim works such as Ibn Rushd's works and learn something about the West without having to read, primarily from the primary sources such as Plato. So going into Ibn Rushd's commentary on the Republic, Ibn Rushd explains that the city-state or the polity is a macrocosmic representation of its people. So you have the person who is a microcosm, and if you gather all of them to form an aggregate, so the city is a macrocosm. You have a small universe, and then you have the larger universe. So it's a representative. But the people living in the city, each of these people has a soul, and the soul is constantly engaged in an internal battle between reason and desire. So you see that if nations go to war, you have two countries that are going to war with each other, is actually the aggregate desire of the people in each country, meaning each people, they have this battle, and then the desire for war is great, and everybody in a country desire to have war with the neighboring country, for as an example. So they will move the country towards creating conflict with the other. And if the opposing country, they exhibit the same behavior, the people have an aggregate desire to engage in warfare with the other one, then war will erupt. So we see Ibn Rushd then explains that an intelligent person with strong virtue of temperance, which he says it's the noblest and most powerful part of the human soul, this person has the strength to conquer the lower and animalistic desires of the body. So if you have, so he says that a strong person is one who subjugates his lower desires, and conversely, a weak or a licentious person is one who is defeated by these desires. So between justice provided by the ruler and the aggregate quality of temperance in the ruler's subjects, meaning the people of the country, so there exists a reciprocal relationship. Through the collective action and the behavior of the people, that relationship will ultimately determine the degree of success in preserving and perpetuating the city-state or the polity or the nation. So we can see how here we see that Ibn Rushd is using his Muslim worldview, the worldview of Islam, to try appropriate, to take in some of the philosophies espoused by Plato, because we have another, hadith or athar that says that kama takunu yuwalla alaykum, as you are, so shall your leader be. So the leader is a reflection of the people. So you see in a democratic setting, if you see so many people, they aspire towards good, they have a love of knowledge, and then they desire peace. So the nation will work towards that, and they will work towards electing. They will elect leaders who are like them, who love knowledge, who love peace, and they try best to avoid warfare. Conversely, if you have, so many stupid people running around and they hate knowledge, they don't go into education, and they want war, they want to conquer
Mhm.
territories. They want to take other people's properties. So the leader will
Mhm.
reflect that aspiration. You will have a warlike leader, a person who likes to instigate into war, and that was what happens in Greece during the
Mhm.
time of Socrates, during the time of Plato. That was the time when the Greek city states, they were going to war with each other. In fact,
Mhm.
these philosophers who exhort towards wisdom, towards love of knowledge, towards justice, they were ostracized by their own people. Remember, Socrates was asked to drink the hemlock. He was
Mm.
punished for for influencing the mind of the youth. And
Yeah.
Plato also, he was exiled, and you can see that he was rather than drink the hemlock, he chose to self-exile himself. Only
Mhm.
Aristotle got lucky because he had the patronage of Alexander, who was one of his students. So
Mhm.
you can go from there. We can go to the second treatise, which
Yeah.
revolves around the idea of the virtuous city, as discussed by Plato, and
Mhm.
also by the Muslim philosopher Al-Farabi,
Mhm.
who expounds the same concept in his work Mabadi Ara Ahl al-Madinah al-Fadilah, meaning the principles of the virtuous city. So again, trying to appropriate Greek philosophy into the crucible of the Islamic worldview. So,
Mhm.
so in this second treatise, we can see Ibn Rushd discussing, qualities of the ruler of a virtuous city. You have a people, and then you have
Yeah.
a leader. What
Right.
sort of city that can emerge from such a relationship? So
Mhm.
this is what they call to be virtuous city, where the people, where the ruler have
Mhm.
seven, or
Mm.
more than seven qualities, predisposition towards theoretical sciences,
Are we sharing the
retention.
qualities here?
Yeah, we are sharing some of the
Okay.
qualities here.
All right.
So the qualities are predisposition towards theoretical sciences,
Mhm.
memory retention, not forgetful,
Mm.
love of learning, and wonderful longing for all parts of science,
Mhm.
love of truth, and hate of falsehood, because these two cannot go
Yeah.
together.
Right.
Repugnance for sensual desires.
Mm.
And then the ruler is not a lover of money.
Mhm.
I mean, he is more concentrated towards is discharging his civic duties rather than
Mm.
accumulating wealth.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the ruler has enlarged thought. He's always contemplating, reflecting, and then he is courageous. And then lastly, he is disposed towards virtues like good, beauty, and justice. So these are the two treatises that we can talk about, which form the central ideas in Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato's Republic.
Amazing. I mean, something that we all should actually learn and try to practice at certain point in our life, right?
Yes.
So, how would you like
Yeah.
to conclude? As a time we have about 5 to 6 minutes now. How would you like to
Yeah.
conclude Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato's Republic this week, inshallah?
So yeah. Maybe I got some feedbacks from some of
Uh
our
huh.
listeners. They say that this is an interesting thing that we are doing in Great Works, to
Right.
talk about the history of things, but they want to connect
Mm.
it more with the modern times. How did they?
Okay.
So I see that if
Mm.
we read these books, we can see that they had some of the serious discussion back then,
Mm-hmm.
because philosophy or knowledge, they
Mm-hmm.
go back and forth. We can see that in the ninth century, Muslims were learning, translating, and discussing major ideas, because after revelation you have the scholars, and then you have rulers. What better way to learn how to better administer the Muslim states, the Muslim empires, because they had been conquering, they had been fighting the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire. That they gained, large footholds, and how better to manage the empire and protect the well-being of the Muslim people. And also we learn another hadith saying that al-kalimatul hikmah dalalatul mu'min fa'ainama wajadaha fa'ahaqqu biha. So the Prophet said that wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Wherever he finds it, he has most right to it. So as long as philosophy is not in contrast with religion, with religious principles, we can see everywhere that Muslims try to gain benefit from knowledge. So here we can see that Ibn Rushd, he is defending the philosophers. He is trying to practice that prophetic tradition, that if you find wisdom in any other philosophical tradition that not necessarily runs in contrast with the religion, then you can use it, you can appropriate it. And we can see that Ibn Rushd is also trying to Islamize some of this philosophy, and then he tries to appropriate from Aristotle, and he tries to purify philosophy from the deviating or the corrupt, which he sees to be corrupt beliefs that has surreptitiously infiltrated into, originally confused by Plato, but which Muslim philosophers try to Islamize, try to distill and use as guiding principles to learn from the ancients. So today, what the young Muslims should do with regards to modern times, we can see that some of these philosophies are beginning to emerge again in the sciences. The belief that what we discussed earlier in episodes on Imam Ghazali, some of these philosophies have merged again in a new form. Today we call it science. The belief that the world, the universe is eternal. The atheistic belief that we don't have a soul, that after we die we will rejoin the prime material of the universe, which is again the ancient philosophies, that the one that the Greek philosophers has held. And also the belief that the mind is something you can transfer. You see people working, discussing whether the mind is actually the product of the various chemical reactions inside the brain. You have the discipline of neuroscience, and then are we just the chemical balances or the imbalances of the peptides, neurotransmitters in our brain, in our nerves? And are we just the electrical impulses which we can imitate, we can copy into a circuit board, and thus giving birth to things like artificial intelligence? You see the movie starring Johnny Depp, Transcendence, if I'm not mistaken, where they try to do this. And films are wonderful things that the West can come up. They are the thought experiments where they cannot do in real life. They try to explore such themes in their
Mm-hmm.
films. So they try to do this to see whether the mind can be copied, the
Mm-hmm.
mind can be reduced to electrical impulses, and ultimately the mind can be digitalized and made into software, into artificial intelligence, therefore preserving the human being as an immortal being.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what the ancient Greek philosophers also the questions that they grapple. So we see such questions emerging again today by reading these old
Mm-hmm.
philosophies and
Yeah.
the discourse that had happened. We can see that these are just recurring themes of the Western philosophies. So we
Mm-hmm.
can thank Ibn Rushd
Of
for
course.
giving us this, and
Yeah.
giving us the heads up of
Mm-hmm.
the philosophies in the Western world. So I think
Yes.
that's what we can conclude today.
Right. Thank you. It's
Yeah,
another great works in the Muslim world that we should explore and learn from. But are we what are we sharing next week, inshallah? Do you
yeah.
have a plan already?
So for next week's, I've planned this. We're planning to invite several speakers. I
Okay.
think with next week we are inviting Dr. Sheikh Saifuddin,
Mm,
Sheikh Muhammad Ali, the director of Kias. He will
okay.
be, I will be interviewing him to
Uh-huh.
ask
Uh-huh.
him about Ibn Sina and Ibn Sina's great work called Al-Qanun fi Tib, the canon of medicine. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that we will have another series where we will go into the Ibn Sina and Al-Biruni exchange, their correspondence, and also a track on legal theory on Al-Saraksi. So I'm planning to invite on this show
Yeah.
some speakers
Yeah.
who are themselves intellectuals.
Right, inshallah. Can't wait to have
Yeah.
them on board. Great works of the Muslim world in the next
Yeah.
episodes, inshallah. So until then, we would like to thank you, Dr. Muhammad Usni Muhammad Amin, for sharing on Ibn Rushd commentary on Plato's Republic. And
You're
we hope
welcome.
to have you back on show again next week, inshallah. Then thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah.